We're continuing our series called Life Under the Sun, and life truly can be, it can be hard, right? There are some things that go on that we don't like. It can be confusing, which I think is especially appropriate when we're in the middle of like a pandemic and wearing masks and things. We're not sure what's going on. And life can often be unpredictable. As the great prophet Forrest Gump once said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. Maybe he's not a prophet, but you know, the truth is, even though life is like a box of chocolates, there's really, you don't know what you're going to get. But there really is sort of the box lid, if you will. Like anyone, you get the box of chocolates and it's got the lid. I'm never sure whether I flip it over this way or that way to figure out, but there's a key there, right? And with some wisdom, you can look at what appears to be the chaos of life, the box of chocolates, and you can find some good in there. So you don't get stuck at something weird and lemony. Instead, you get something with peanut butter and chocolate. You know, whoever added the peanut butter to chocolate the first time, they deserve the Nobel Prize in Confectionery Arts. Nobel Prize in Candy. Anyway, Ecclesiastes, we're going to jump right in before it gets worse here. And we all get hungry because I'm talking about this. But fortunately, you're all wearing masks and you can't eat anything, so it'll be good for you. But Ecclesiastes chapter 9, verses 11, you're like, no, we can do all things. Ecclesiastes chapter 9, starting verse 11, it says, I have observed something else under the sun. And you know, this is kind of, he's observed things that are in life. The fastest runner doesn't always win the race. The strongest warrior doesn't always win the battle. The wise sometimes go hungry, and the skillful are not necessarily wealthy. And those who are educated don't always lead successful lives. It is all decided by chance, by being in the right place at the right time. So the fastest don't always win the race. Now, if I were to, now we'll see how much faith and trust you have in me. If I were to race today, Usain Bolt. How's that going down? By the laughter, you guys know who he is. He's like the fastest human probably ever. I don't know if he's faster or a cheetah. I'm not even sure. Keep moving. Now it's funny, if you watched, like Noah Lyles thought he beat him. Because they set him at the wrong starting time. Anyway, he only ran 185. You know, I might be feeling fast. I'm feeling fast today. Like, I'm not going to brag, but I was on the bike yesterday. Some of you know we do some road biking because most of the stories lately are about road biking. I hit 41 miles an hour yesterday on the bike. It was downhill, but I felt real good because in Delaware, that's about as fast. So I think I could beat Usain Bolt in a race, right? You know, maybe if he was sick the night before. Maybe. We're still not. Maybe if he, is sick right now. Maybe if he hadn't slept for days. Charlie horse in both hamstrings and calves, he would probably still beat me. If he tripped out of the starting gate, he would probably beat me because of two things. One, I have a bad knee. And two, I'm not fast. But generally, we expect the fastest to win, but sometimes that doesn't happen in life. And strongest. Now, I do like to pick things up and put things down. I've lifted with some of you. I'm relatively strong. But me versus the mountain, deadlifting. Just so you don't know who the mountain is, he's a very large dude. He broke 1,100 pounds on the deadlift. If you like strength, I know, people who didn't know him are like, oh my gosh, that's a lot of weight. Right, now, you may think I'm strong. Me versus mountain on deadlift, how's it going? I'm thankful you have confidence in me. It's not going well. I'm going to tear my arms off. But it's funny because even though, head to head, I'm not fast like Usain Bolt. I'm not as strong as the mountain. But sometimes when actual sports go down, it doesn't always work out like that, right? I often beat somebody who was a better wrestler than me. Because I was king of the opportunity. I would wait for that, I was usually in better shape, believe it or not. But I would always train hard because I'd be getting my tail kicked during the match. Third period, and I wrestled heavyweight. And now it's easy to look at me and go heavyweight. I was a light heavyweight. I used to have to drink water to make the heavy, to be heavy enough to wrestle heavyweight. Now I'd have to stop drinking water to make weight for heavyweight. But sometimes you beat better opponents. And like football. Because we don't really know what's going on with football right now, right? Coming up in the fall. Now, when your football team plays a team that's weaker than you and you know you're going to win. Isn't that a great feeling? Not a great feeling when you know they're going to win and they don't win. Maybe it's because of a bad call. Maybe it was, a penalty that they got missed. But often, ever seen a bad call change the outcome of a game? And sometimes, the truth is we don't always. Now, we recently had 4th of July. One of my favorite 4th of July memes, I don't know if I mentioned it this year, it pops up on my... The nice thing about Facebook is if you repost a meme, it comes back every year, That's why I don't post bad things in my life. I don't want to be reminded every year on the anniversary of that. Hey, you had a horrible day. Last year, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. How about today? Anyway, one of my favorite 4th of July memes is, for those of you who have some British roots, you'll appreciate this. Happy Treason Day, you ungrateful colonists. And it was, And if you know your history of the American Revolution, we shouldn't have won, right? We were kind of this upstart little nation. I don't know what we were thinking. But we really shouldn't have won. We were the weaker of the two. British had an empire. We had an empire state. Anyway, it was sort of kind of it was unexpected. Now, then the wise and the educated. Sometimes doesn't life work out, even if you're smart, even if you kind of do the right things. Sometimes it still doesn't go in your favor. Now, some of you have gone into a job interview. Maybe this has happened to you. Hopefully you've gone into a job interview at this point in your life, except for the children. It's okay you didn't. Sorry you guys have to hang out here during the pandemic, but I'll try to keep it entertaining and move my hands a lot. I don't know. Like those big things on the side of the road selling cars. If I do that, would that entertain you guys? Oh. Anyway, they're awkward. Everyone stops staring at me. But sometimes you go in for a job interview, you are the best candidate, right? Some of you have 4.0s. Some of us have 0.4s. But some of you go in, you have the good grades. You did all the academic stuff. You were in all the service things and everything, and you look like the job description was written for you. Anyone ever gone into that interview? Anyone ever gone into that interview and not gotten the job? Because we get, because the boss's nephew needed a job. That's literally where nepotism comes from. It's like hiring your nephew. And there's times where sometimes, on paper it looks like you should get the job and you don't. You don't end up with it. And then I love are you guys familiar with the Peter Principle? Oh man, that was, a couple of you were right off on that. The Peter Principle is this business principle where you eventually get promoted to your level of incompetence. And so, you do well at a job, you get promoted, right? You do well at a job, you get promoted, right? You do well at a job and you're not good at it, they just leave you there. So now you're in a job you can't do well, and most of us don't want to step down out of. And so you end up, and so that's great, I guess, if anyone ever been in that job where you're the Peter. You don't want to admit it because you're afraid your boss is here and they're going to find out you're incompetent. But often you work for that person and it's awkward, right? Because you're like, man, I should have their job. But they've got seniority. They've been there. So they keep the job. Now, from the nod, and I see some of y'all have had some, but that's true, right? Because sometimes that is how life works. You have people ahead of you that really should be behind you, and it doesn't seem fair. Now, he's not saying this is how life should be. And the author of Ecclesiastes is not saying this is how life should be, but this is often how life is. Because things don't, it's not always the best and the smartest. It's not always the most qualified. Example, YouTube celebrities. For those of you who are older, you'll feel me on this. I'm constantly, when I read the news and, there's some article about somebody and everyone's they're famous and you're like, I don't even know who this person is. Anyone get to that point now where I used to kind of know, all of us who are approaching 40 are and I'm constantly looking up people who is this? And my kids are that's a YouTuber. And there's people who, we didn't have YouTube when we were kids, but they're famous. Some of them are just famous for being famous, but some of them are very savvy and have created this niche of being, they act dumb, but they're really smart. And they've done it. Some people just kind of stumble into it, I think. It's like, and your whole life is playing video games in front of other people and making like more money than I will ever see. And some of you are like, that's what I'm aspiring for. That's my chance at it. I'm going to be a YouTube celebrity. So very shrewd, create a niche. Great. Sometimes fame, influence, and money come to some people who lack some wisdom, and I'm just going to leave it there. You can figure out your most hated or YouTube star from that. Some of you are like going, I didn't know there was such a thing in this. I'm going to have to Google it when I get home, and you will, because and you'll find it because YouTube is owned by Google. Anyway, and here's the thing: these are all characteristics that many of us seek, right? Like, who doesn't want to be strong? I mean, some people say that in the gym. They're like, I don't want to lift because I don't want to be strong. No, you just don't want to put in the work. But most of us, if we chose weak or strong, we would choose to be strong. Most of us, if we were, slow or fast, we would choose, to be fast. And most of us, if we were choose to be smart and wise or dumb, most of us would choose these things, and they're not bad things in and of themselves, but often they don't bring with them the control that we seek in life. Because I want to be strong, I want to be fast, I want to be wise, and I want to control how things come out in life, but it doesn't work out that way sometimes. Life is difficult, and ultimately, here's the thing, these things will not bring us fulfillment. You can be strong, you can be fast, you can be smart, but ultimately they're not going to bring you the fulfillment in life that we need. I think life is a lot like the game of life sometimes. You ever play that game of life? I go on Facebook Marketplace a lot now because I have friends who are looking for bikes, and I'm on there, and like someone's selling the classic game of life, and I'm like, dude, I had that. It's probably still in my dad's closet, but it's not going for enough money that I'm going to go dig it out of the closet. If they ever get classic at hundreds of dollars, I'm looking for my game of life. But I remember we used to play the game of life, and you get in this car, and there's very little choices in the game if you remember how you play. Like, you spin and you move, and like there's a couple like forks in the road, you can choose either way, but then it's just like things just happen to you as you go along. And a lot of times life is that way. We make some decisions, we do some things, but kind of life kind of then plods along, and we get what there is, and that's how life is. Or life is like Monopoly. I like the game Monopoly. And Monopoly is a funny thing because how your whole game goes, sometimes it's how you roll the dice the first time around the board. You ever go around the board and not get any good property? You're like, come on, like all I got is Baltic Avenue and some fees. It's not going well for your game. And generally, after you establish who owns what property and things, and it's then just the luck of the dice. There's strategy to it, but it's a lot of the luck of the dice, and that's the way life is. Now, I have, again, we're getting lots of biking analogies because I've been biking, not fun bike like Drew, but more like pedal bike because I'm trying to stay healthy. And it's funny, like right now, all kinds of people are out there biking, man. It's like, any of you bike that I don't know about, we'll pull you into the group. But there's people everywhere. Gertie's looking around, it's funny. My nickname, I don't get it put on the back of my shirt. It's Flat Tire Dyer. Now, I put a little more stress on a bike than they're probably meant to have. I don't know there's a weight limit for bikes, but if there is, I'm over it. I often use a ladder and they're like, weight limit. I'm like, I'm not even carrying anything yet. I'm over that weight limit. But we joke because it's Flat Tire Dyer. Now, my first flat this week. My first flat was, I was heading through Goldsboro, Maryland. I hit something. I saw it. Like I was heading right into town, and it was like too fast. Hit it. sliced the tire, it pinched on the rim. I was stranded. I almost called some of you. I was like, I had my list in my mind of all the people I could call to come get me in Goldsboro, Maryland. And you'd just be glad you weren't on that list or didn't get far enough down. Fortunately, my first one, Dee, she could pick me up, love of my life, ride of my life. But, she always gives me a ride because I'm always breaking down places. Now, okay, side lesson learned though, there are a lot of good people out there. Man, I can't believe how many people stop to help me. Now, they're either helpful or serial killers. We'll never know for sure. But there are still a lot of good people out there. You break down the side of the road there, so I just got to say that because, there's some good things. So it was understandable though. I got a flat tire because I hit something and there was all physical. Yesterday, we're riding. My tire just exploded for no apparent reason, and we're trying to figure out, because if you have to figure out if there's anything in there that's going to pop the tire again. So we're doing this, and I think at least 3 of us went through my tire entirely thinking, well, he missed it, but surely it's in here. We think it may have actually been a defective tube, which happens. But there just seemed to be no reason. It's random and confusing. And a lot of times, sometimes there's intentional things that we see why, maybe decisions we made where to ride the bike, things go wrong. But sometimes it seems like we haven't done anything wrong. We've made all the right choices. We've done the right things, and life doesn't work out. Our tire pops. And we're stranded on the side of the road. And it doesn't matter who you are. Time and chance happen to us all. And there's times where life is going to roll your way. And if you're old enough, there's times where life is going to roll on you. And it's often hard to figure out why things happen. And I think Solomon here sounds gloomy if you just read it at face value. But it helps if we kind of move past this superficial idea that life is just about what happens to us here. If life is just about the circumstances of your life and how things roll in this life, if there's no greater purpose, there's no things behind it all, it can seem sort of gloomy. It seems like a bad thing. And the truth is, there's more to life than this. And he often, life it often seems, pointless at times. It can, if we're honest. It's Solomon, the author, who we believe authored this book, wrote, he often wrote the word meaningless. Meaningless, all is meaningless. And again, it's not a gloomy thing. It's just that the word kind of has more the idea, it's a breath, it's a vapor, it's temporary. And it ultimately slips away. I sit with someone last night whose life is slipping away. And too young. And the truth is, life moves on. And it's some of us who are older, man. It's just like, man, I swear, like yesterday, I was in high school. Now it's like yesterday I may have driven by the high school. But it's like life just kind of moves quickly. And verse 12 says, people can never predict when hard times might come, like fish in a net or birds in a trap. People are caught by sudden tragedy. Fish and birds. I don't know. Most of you are probably not catching fish or birds in nets. Anyone? You don't catch them. You take their pictures. You check out her beautiful pictures of birds. I remember that one. They're like, look, an eagle grabbed the fish. And you were like, that's an osprey. National news keeps saying eagle. Julie's like, osprey. Just saying.
Eagles rob ospreys.
What?
Eagles rob ospreys over the fish.
We'll learn all about that later. But I remember Finding Nemo. Swim away. It's like you wouldn't sit there if the net were like, oh look, a net. My dad always calls a net. It's a bunch of holes tied together. So if you're watching online, Dad, that one's for you. But you wouldn't sit there if you knew you were being trapped. It's like every time you watch like a cartoon trap, it's like fake looking leaves spread over like a net, and the person's always like, oh look, a carrot or something, whatever they want, and you wouldn't, if you knew you were getting trapped, you wouldn't be in there. Now I like to hunt, as some of you know, and it's not hunting season, so now you're getting mostly Viking stories. In the fall you'll get more hunting stories, but you know, so those of you who are like, who hate hunting, sorry. But, you know, it's sometimes you're sitting in the stand and sometimes the deer just walk right up to you and they don't even know you're there. Like, it's a beautiful thing. I could tell you all about how to descent your clothes and things. And I often have deer like standing underneath my stand. Like, I could jump down and catch them, which they look so soft and cuddly, but I know it would not go well. I have friends who tried it once and he got like kicked in the face, but not jumping out of the stand. Anyway, that's another story for another time. But you know, if they knew I was there, they wouldn't be coming underneath, right? Because if I decide they are of the right size, then we'll be taking them home because they're cold, because it's chilly outside. We'll warm them up in the oven. But you know, they wouldn't walk under there if I knew I was there, right? They generally hide from us because that's how deer survive. It's funny though, deer, like they will run from like the smallest little thing in the woods, right? Like a little break. Your car's coming right at them. They stand there like a deer caught in headlights. I don't know. But anyway, you wouldn't stay there. And see, we can't avoid tragedies and sudden changes in life. If you're old enough, something's gone wrong, right? But we can't predict them. But the truth is, life is just sort of unpredictable at times. Now, some of you, maybe that's... Now, you might go, oh, but Jeff, I can predict things. Okay. Does anybody remember New Year's Eve? It's kind of vaguely now. It just seems like a long time ago. What were we all thinking? 2020, man. Got 2020 vision. Yeah, it's going to be great. Who picked pandemic? No, we thought it was going to be the best year. We got 2020 vision this year, right? Man, this is going to be awesome. Now you're like, oh. Life is unpredictable, and not everything that comes at us is good, but God still works together things for good. Now, some of you know where I'm going here, Romans 8:28. And we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose. There's lots of bad stuff that come at us in life. It doesn't mean that God causes all things, but God will use those things for good. Now, there's a lot of things bad come out of the pandemic. People died, right? That's not good. But I've known people whose marriages have been restored because they're stuck in the same house together. And there's people like freed from sex trafficking. Some of the missionaries we support, I don't talk enough about the things they do, but we do a lot of things. We help, with sex trafficking around the world. They had to shut down the brothels. They're letting them go. We just got to provide a place for them to live. So I'm not saying everything out of this has been good, but God still uses things for good. And so even when life kind of hits you in the face, like getting punched by Mike Tyson, God still works some things together. Verse 13. Here's another bit of wisdom that has impressed me as I've watched the way our world works. There was a small town with only a few people. Think Wyoming, where we are. Think Viola. It's kind of, I always like, we actually had violins. What do you call them? Anyone here know where Viola is? Anyone have no idea what town I'm talking about, but you've probably driven through it, right? Like, so we ride through it on bikes now, and I always think of Viola. Anyway, okay. Small town with only a few people. The great king came with his army and besieged it. A poor wise man knew how to save the town, and so was rescued. But afterward, no one thought to thank him. That's how life works sometimes, right? You can do good things, but people forget you. Now, there are, several inventions that have changed the world for me. Number one, the pizza table. Yeah, some of you are too young to remember the struggle, because the struggle was real. But, in 1985, a woman named Carmela Vitali invented the little plastic three-legged table that sits in the middle of the pizza box. It keeps it. Now, today, some of y'all got the thick boxes that don't fold over. In our day, it was like this soft paperboard, and you got more fiber. Y'all, some of you have cheesy bread today. We had cheesy box because it would go down and it would get all cheesy, and then like if you wanted cheese, you had to scrape it off the box, and there was cardboard going into your body. That was just fiber. Maybe that, I don't know. that was how we got fibered in. Some of you don't understand the struggle. The struggle was real back then. I know it's an environmental nightmare now because there's all like millions of little those three-legged tables, and what do you do with that? I don't know. Anyway, maybe we could reuse them. Maybe we can recycle them. I don't know. But okay, the other thing, another really important invention, the aglet. Right? I mean, where would we be without an aglet? Some of you were like, what is an aglet? You know that little plastic thing that wraps around your shoelace so you can get it through the hole? Can you imagine lacing your 3-year-old's shoes? This is pre-Velcro. And not having that little thing? That thing's a lifesaver, man. Your life, probably, because I'd kill you. No. I'd be switching to Velcro. But, this guy in 1790, Harvey Kennedy, in case you're wondering, invented the aglet. Now, here's the thing. You may think of these things. You may use these things. Who has used a pizza table in the last year, gotten a pizza with a little table in it? Anyone? A couple of you. Who has used an aglet? Now, when you did you thank Carmela Vitale and Harvey Kennedy? No, you forgot all about them. You benefited from their work. Like the person who saved the town, but you didn't give them a second thought. And the truth is that's how life is. Like there's another Tom Hanks movie. Anyone see that one? Hanks, the war movie. Anyone see that one yet? I didn't watch it yet because I've just been praying and reading my Bible the entire time. So no, I'm kidding. Haven't gotten to watch it yet. But it's this drama of a war story that probably most of you have never heard, right? Because we forget the past heroes. We move on. That's how life works. It's not that it's good, but that's how things work. Verse 16. So even though wisdom is better than strength, those who are wise will be despised if they're poor. What they say will not be appreciated for long. Wisdom is better than strength. Okay, another quick question. Who would win a wrestling match? Me or Silverback Gorilla?
Gorilla.
You should answer gorilla without even thinking. I appreciate those of you who thought for a second and went, well, I don't know. Jeff had a pretty good single leg sweep back in the day. But who do you go to see in the zoo, me or the gorilla? Wisdom. We smarter. So wisdom can be better because wisdom is better than strength. And wisdom is a good thing. Now, wisdom is. Now, do you remember the story of Joseph in the Bible? Anyone? I don't have time to read it. I thought about reading it, but my sermons get long enough without reading all the stories. Some of you are laughing and you're saying amen, and we got kids in here, so we got to keep it moving, and I'm doing this like the wind thing. Anyway, Joseph, he was sold into slavery by his brothers. Not a good thing that happens to him. He rises to the top of the household that he gets sold into, Potiphar's house. And then, his wife wants to sleep with him. He won't. She accuses him. He goes to jail. He's in jail. And while he's in jail, he kind of rises to the top there. And then he has two people who are the king's servants come in. He interprets their dreams. You should read the story. It's kind of cool. And the one, it goes well for. The other, not so well. And then he's like, hey, remember me when you get back to the king, though, because the one he was going to go well for doesn't, totally forgets him until a later time. And eventually gets out and, saves the nation Israel, saves a lot of nations. Anyway, here he's forgotten in prison. Now, if the story ended there, with him still in prison, we're gonna back it up a little bit. It's still a life well lived. Because he was still serving God. He was doing his thing. And, even if the story ends there, it's better to serve God. It's better to be wise. It's better to live your life right, even when things don't work out. This is not a story about how to work hard in prison and get out. But, God was accomplishing his purposes. And sometimes life can be confusing and we don't understand everything, but we will understand it later. If we have this eternal perspective. And being wise may not make you rich, powerful, and famous, but it's still something to pursue. To live this wise life the way God would have you live. And it helps you make sense of things even when things aren't going your way. Verse 17, better to hear the quiet words of a wise person than shouts of a foolish king. I think in our culture we often feel the loudest voice is the wisest voice. Because we got some loud voices in our culture, right? This whole section agreed. This section wasn't as sure. And truth is, it's kind of like, you ever watch The Price is Right? That was like the show to watch back in the day when you were sick, because we didn't have all the fancy channels like you all did. We'd watch The Price is Right, and it was like before, Drew Carey or whatever. Basically, it was a hard show for me as a little kid, though, because I never bought much, Like, unless it was like candy on there, there's candy. I'm like, that's $1.37. I know the retail price of that. They're putting on automobiles. I'm like, I'm 7. I don't know. Cars, maybe they cost $1 million. Maybe they cost 20. It's all the same to me, But, Price is Right. Like you're not sure everyone's what in the crowd. They're shouting, right? They're like shouting all kinds of nonsensical numbers. And hopefully, you might get lucky and land on one. Or maybe what something costs, but there's all these answers being shouted out. And our culture shouts out answers to life, shouts out answers to things that we're tempted to do, but they're not all right answers, right? You hear loud shouts for, hey, it's just sex. Hey, it's okay to look. Everybody does it. Nobody's perfect. It won't matter this one time. It's okay to hate people. You deserve this. And a lot of times what we hear from our culture around us is not things that are wise in the way that God has told us to live. And so that's why we read the Bible. We spend time studying the Bible because it teaches us this way to live. That this is a better way to live our lives. And it's not the volume that matters. It's the virtue of the truth. It's not the volume, it's the veracity. Is this true? No matter how loud we say it, no matter how many likes we get for something, is it God's truth? Verse 18, better to have wisdom than weapons of war, but one sinner can destroy much that is good. It's better to be wise than have destructive power. Proverbs 9:10, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. We naturally seek power and control, but we need to seek wisdom from God. I would love to own a tank. Some of you are glad I don't, because I would drive it down the road. No, but it would be fun to own a tank. I'm pretty sure, are you allowed to own a tank? I was pretty sure no. You were answering yes. You're not sure. I don't. There's one like up on. You ever go like the back way through to Middletown? There's that one. Anyone else, dream about owning that tank? Just me. Okay. That was an awkward moment. I feel much worse about myself now. But it'd be fun to own one, right? But wisdom says we don't let everybody own tanks, because one fool in a tank would destroy years worth of work, right? It would cause a lot of destruction. Ecclesiastes 10:1, as dead flies cause even a bottle of perfume to stink, so a little foolishness spoils great wisdom and honor. That's a great image for kids. Stinky perfume, flies in them. Here's the truth. No amount of air freshener can fix some stank. You know what I mean? Like dudes, we do this. We're like, I could shower, or I could just put on some more deodorant and cologne. Any dude ever do that? And now want to admit it? No. Some of you are good. You bathe and all that. That's good. But some of us have struggled with that. And if you've ever gone like to camp with kids, like some of them are just like I could shower, or I could just spray some more stink stuff under there. You know, there's not enough Drakkar Noir in the world. That was the scent back in the day, man. Now I guess it's like at the drugstore and people make fun of it. I don't know. But you know, there's not enough of that to do what it needs to do. And you can tell the difference between a guy apartment and a girl apartment most of the time when you walk in. Now, except Devin, who had scented candles. We love Devin. Shout out to the man. But you know, most dudes, our places stink. That's why we get married, so it smells better. You know, it's just true. If you're college friends, guys, it's like you're like, my gosh, I would not go to. I would run to the Wawa to go to the bathroom before I'd use your bathroom. You know, some of you understand what I mean. I've known friends who did that. They're like they didn't have a working bathroom; they had to go to the gas station. But that's life, college life. See, now it's not going to be all lost that it's like kind of remote now. You can use your own bathroom at home. But you know, and sometimes a little thing can ruin a lot. Now, if you don't believe a little stink can ruin something nice, find that sippy cup you forgot that's full of milk in your minivan. That cottage cheese stuff comes out, like you want to throw up, or you're trying to get it to you're like, do I throw out this cup or wash this cup? You've been there. You've been there. And a little bit of stink ruins that whole van, right? You're like, you got to go get the thing detailed because, you know, you lost the sippy cup and you don't even remember even having that sippy cup in there. You know, and it's, you know, we had a dish can in college. It was like, you know, yeah, you have a giant trash can in your kitchen and you throw all your dirty dishes in it. And then you just wash stuff off the top that you need. Was that just us? Let's just say it was bad down there. We eventually had to get to the bottom of things, and it was, you know. Sorry, Pat. You remember that? The bomb. You know, it was funny. You know, most of the building right now is shut down with COVID. We just can't kind of use it all because, you know, there's restrictions on things. We don't want to get people sick, so we're being smart about things. But a lot of us still heat food for the homeless because, you know, we have a love for the homeless folk. We do a lot to serve them. We don't get a lot of publicity for it, but we have people who faithfully pick up the food. We have people who faithfully heat the food. We have people who deliver food, and we do a lot with working and feeding the homeless and things. And one of the people came a couple weeks ago, and they're like, I think there's a gas leak. And I'm like, oh no. And I was working at home, so I was like, I better go in and check this gas. We're looking for the gas leak. I brought Denise with me because, you know, she can smell things better. Because again, she's a woman. They just smell better. And they all can smell better. But you know, I brought her, we thought there's gas leak. I'm looking everywhere for leaky gas. I kept lighting matches, walking around. No, I'm kidding. I didn't do that. Just seeing if you're listening. But you know, here's the thing. You know, it ended up being, since nobody was coming in as much, I don't know what I'd thrown away in that trash can. It made the entire, I don't know, it went from like one day it was fine to the next day, everything, the whole building stunk like bad gas or something, man. It was bad. And it was just a little something there in the trash. We had to throw that out. I was like nearly vomiting, tying that thing up. Like, oh. And that's how it is. And here's one drop. I was thinking, like, what's an analogy today? Because we're all going through this COVID thing. One drop of COVID would spoil a coffee. Like I love coffee. You know, I was drinking some espresso today. If you know, and you know, Justin was trying to steal it. You know, he was like, when you set it down to go up, I'm gonna take it. But you wouldn't take it if you knew I had COVID. I don't. I just make sure we misunderstand. People are like putting their masks back on, getting, you know, because one drop of COVID would ruin it, right? And that's it. Only here's. What does that all mean? Because now we're getting into sort of a proverbial section in Ecclesiastes, and some of the proverbs you read it, you're like, a dog returns to his vomit. What is that about? Some of you, that's your favorite proverb, right? But point being is, you know, a little bit of foolishness can ruin a good thing. Now, sometimes we've worked our whole lives to build a reputation for doing things right. We'll let one thing in, one bad decision, one night, one drink before you drive, and that can ruin things. And that's how life works. You know, and I have some examples of this that I don't want to share. Some of them involve people I know where they made one bad decision. lifetime of good, one unwise decision. Now, there's some unwise decisions you can back out of still. You can get rid of. And it's still better to live a wise life after this. But the truth is, just a little bit can stink it up. And so we have to be careful of that. It says a wise person chooses the right road. A fool takes the wrong one. Matthew 7:13. You can enter God's kingdom only through the narrow gate. The highway to hell is broad. And some of us are singing that. And its gate is wide for many who choose that way. But the gateway to life is very narrow, and the road is difficult, and only a few ever find it. A few weeks ago, I used the analogy again. Everything's bike analogies right now. It'll be deadlifting next week when my back heals. I don't know. But we were biking a couple weeks ago, and there was a giant ditch on one side, and I believe it was Gertie on the other. So I had to stay focused because if I went a little to the right, I'd be out for the night. Went out a little to the left, and there'd be nothing left. I don't know. Trying to make a rhyme here. I know you want me to freestyle. I'm just not going to do it. But and that's the picture of discipleship, because we can kind of go one way or the other. We can go too far the other, and that's we have to stay focused and on the path in life. And we can explore this a little more later, or we'll come back to it again. But being a disciple of Jesus brings us life. Being a disciple means choosing that right path and staying on it. And that often means making the right choices. I was sitting down, I do some discipleship stuff. If any of you guys ever want to do it, I love sitting down, working with people through some scripture. We're doing some of that right now. I'm doing that with someone right now. And we just talked about, it's easy to know the right. Sometimes it's harder to live it. Some of you know what I mean. Because it's easy to know the right path. It's harder to stay on it. It's what Jesus is getting at. And really to live the life that God calls us to live, it's easy to go off in other directions. And there's some narrowness to it. Now, the analogy I like, again, it's all bike analogies, but there's two pedals to things. Because there is our effort. We're made right with God purely by grace alone. But there's an effort for us to stay on the path and keep pedaling. There's also the Holy Spirit who comes inside and changes us and makes us able to do things. It takes both of those pedals to keep us moving forward. But there is this way to live that's different. And it's this better way of life. Another analogy I heard one time years ago, and it totally made sense to me, and I think it makes sense in the context usually when I'm talking to somebody. There was this story, and there's like two wolves inside of you. There's a good wolf and a bad wolf, and the grandfather's telling his son, and he's like, there's a good wolf that wants everything that's good and right and holy and just and godly, and there's this bad wolf that wants everything that's evil and wrong and murderous, and and the grandson's like, which wolf wins? Because whichever one I feed. And we have to be careful to feed into our lives good things so that we continually want the God things. And if we're not careful, kind of that nastiness spoils the ointment. When we bring in bad stuff, we live a way we're not supposed to live. It destroys us. It makes us think. And it's not staying on the right path. You can identify fools just by the way they walk down the street. And we pity them. ESV, it says it this way: even when the fool walks on the road, he lacks sense. And he says to everyone, he is a fool. It's kind of, is this our new driving verse? You can identify fools by the way they drive. No. But I think of this like the GPS. We listen to it or we go our own way. Now, there are bad GPSs that, I've gotten, and they're like, the rest of the way on foot from here. I'm like, really? I'm going the rest of the way on foot. I don't even know where I am. But, a good GPS, the God GPS, will guide and direct you where to go. But you have to decide, are you going to stay on it or not? Are you going to stay on the path? And you can see that in people's lives, because I often see people, now, I'm going to get personal here, but I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about your neighbor. So look over at your neighbor. That's what I'm talking to right now. If you're looking at your mom, that's a problem. I'm not calling you out, but I often see people make choices they know are wrong and then wonder why things don't go well. Because you can look at it, you see them making the bad decision, you try to talk to them, they don't want to hear it, and then they wonder why things went wrong. Now, you can get back on the right path. As long as we're alive, there's time for that. But we have to be careful about the path we're on. And it says this, if your boss is angry at you, don't quit. A quiet spirit can overcome even great mistakes. No matter how good of an employee you are, you will eventually make your boss angry. Maybe not. Maybe you have that perfect job and you're the perfect employee, but the rest of us. And here's the temptation when your boss is mad at you is what? Scream back at them, get some unemployment. We got a little extra during COVID anyway. I'll take some of that extra. But here's it. Proverbs 15:1 says this. In the NLT says, a gentle answer deflects anger, but harsh words make tempers flare. I always remember it in the NIV, which says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. Some of us need to remember that when we're making comments on Facebook too, I'm just saying. A gentle answer turns away wrath, because we tend to want to stick it to them. Even if we're right, we're still going to be wrong. Sticking out and being humble, a good employee often wins them back over time, right? Now sometimes you got to move on, get another job, that's a whole other sermon. But here's the big point being, wisdom is thinking what God thinks, and with a humble heart, doing what he wants us to do. It's orienting our life because ultimately it's this better way to live. It's this better way to live life. Even if sometimes things get us off track. And we honor God when we live wisely, even in a world that doesn't always reward it. And we honor God when we live wisely, even in a world that doesn't recognize it or recognize him. It's how we live matters. So, what's kind of thinking about how to actually apply this then? What's one wise choice you could make this week? What's one choice that, you kind of know the good and the bad, the wise and the not wise. What's one you could make? And how could you honor God by choosing wisdom, choosing his way, even if the benefit isn't readily visible as we'd like it to be? So as the worship team comes back to play, would encourage you, would love to connect with you this week. There's the connection card thing will go on the screen. Justin will mention it again for the announcements in a little bit. But would love to connect with you. Would love to pray with you. You can fill out a connection. If you're here in person, you can fill out a connection card and we can put them in the back. Would love to pray for you.